I never really thought about a career in nonprofit. I was a young college student who was graduating. I had been active and involved in my community in many ways. As an elected official at the age of 22, I was active in my church. I was a member of the JCs, but I realized that none of those volunteer gigs were going to be able to provide for a young wife, having gotten married, and a young son that was our firstborn, living and growing up in Western Pennsylvania. My career began back in 1980 with a job at the United Way in Western Pennsylvania, a small community United Way that was raising several $1,000,000 a year. I was involved on the allocation side. I was one of the staff people that was actively engaged in helping volunteers make decisions about where dollars were going to be invested in the health and human service community. In a small community, I'll admit to everybody that once campaign rolled around, everybody got involved in raising money. I found that to my liking, and I really thought that it was much more difficult distributing the dollars than it was raising it, because those decisions about who would be able to benefit from that generosity and who would have to go without were just too difficult of decisions to make. After spending 5 years at that entry-level and progressively more responsible positions at that United Way, I moved with my young wife and my only son to New Haven, Connecticut, and got to work in my very first year there at the United Way as the development director with the president of Yale University, A. Bartlett Giamatti. And oh, how we saw a great success in the 3 years that I was there. But I also saw the progression of how we raise money in communities. The internet, I can recall when I was a young fundraiser, didn't exist at the time. And if you can imagine going in my vehicle with a chalkboard in my trunk, that you would go from community to community reporting on what educational institutions raised, what manufacturing plants raised, what public sector entities raised. Now we have much better systems in place that help us raise those resources and see that they're invested wisely in the community. After spending 3 years in New Haven and having a second child, I think my wife and I got a little bit homesick and wanted to come back to at least our Pittsburgh roots. Surprisingly, the Steeler fans that we are, we overshot Pittsburgh and ended up, of all places, of Cleveland, Ohio, working for what still remains one of the greatest United Way organizations in the country. I spent over 15 years working in progressively responsible United Way positions, all in the fundraising arena. And I calculated it recently, in all of those nearly 25 years of raising money for the United Way, I had proudly been associated with campaigns that had raised about $750 million. One important thing that I learned through all those years of experience with the United Way is that people don't give to causes, people give to people. They give because you look them in the eye. They give because you have compassion and conviction about your cause, about that thing which you believe in, the passion that tells them that their money's going to be well spent and that people's lives are going to be touched and impacted in such positive ways because of their generosity. That sentiment has served me well after I left the United Way and went to work for 5 years in coordinating the activities as the CEO of the Arthritis Foundation in Northeastern Ohio. And then most importantly, it continues to serve me and this organization incredibly well as we look to build the mission of Akron Community Foundation here in the greater Akron and Summit County area. We've grown the organization to represent now over $130 million worth of assets. Individual contributors, business contributors, nonprofit groups that have all look to maximize the resource of the investment of their individual donors in seeing that those resources are stretched in the best and most abundant ways possible to help them fulfill their missions in the community. I've been very blessed to have a 30-plus year career of being able to give back to the communities where we've lived, where we've worked, and where we've raised our 3 children. One thing that I find so unique about the greater Akron community, go to an event for Stan Hewitt. Go to an event for the food bank. Go to an event for the Akron Art Museum or hundreds of other nonprofits. You see some of the same leaders, philanthropists, people who care about community in a much broader way than I've seen in any of those places where I've lived and worked before. A sense of community where they embrace the whole of the social services infrastructure, of the needs that people have and how those needs can best be met by a multitude of agencies that are out there to enrich and to touch the lives of people who need the help the most. That's a pretty special thing about this community, and I'm so very, very proud to be with our board, with our staff, and with the hundreds and thousands of donors that have embraced the work of the Akron Community Foundation for the past 55 years, that we continue to have such a positive impact.